Hi, my name's Phil and I like talking politics, and in this video what I'd like to discuss is the fallout from the Brexit deal vote a couple of days ago. In the meantime, if you find the video interesting, then please give it a like and subscribe for further content. Click the bell notification. And so the EU has been stepping up its plans for a no deal. France has just started implementing more of its contingency plans. It's concerning to me how long and thoroughly the EU have been planning for this, and yet the UK government response has been, well, too little too late. But maybe it should give me hope. Maybe the fact that we've done almost nothing to prepare for no deal is because, well, the government doesn't really believe there's going to be a no deal. I mean, after all, there's only a minority of Parliament want a no deal. Parliament's not going to allow a deal. But maybe that hope is vain hope. Who knows? Now, someone asked me yesterday what I thought of Jeremy Corbyn refusing to meet Theresa May. He did so on the reasoning that Theresa May was refusing to rule out no deal. I have to say, I thought his stance was a little foolish. He could have met with her, got nowhere, and then come away saying he tried, but the Prime Minister just wouldn't budge on her red lines. That would be perfectly reasonable. The thing is that refusing to meet with her left him wide open to accusations of refusing to do what he said Theresa May always should have done and reach out across the House to try and find some sort of consensus. And sure enough, he's getting bashed for it in the media today. Now, yes, it's the section of the media that bash him anyway. But frankly, he's just given them the ammunition to do it. And I just think it's silly. The idea that Corbyn is wrecking the process is, of course, ludicrous. But they're able to make the accusation anyway. And he's completely trapped himself because he has drawn a red line. Precisely what he said Theresa May was wrong to do. May can't possibly rule out a no deal because it's in her manifesto pledge that no deal is better than a bad deal. Of course, a no deal is the worst deal of all. Well, it's not a deal at all, is it? But nonetheless, it's in the manifesto. So how can she rule it out? No one seriously believes that she wants it. Although I'm not saying no one seriously believes that it won't happen. Of course, it could happen. But so I just thought it was silly. I think it's asking also for a situation where potentially some Labour MPs are going to be meeting with the Prime Minister. Indeed, Hilary Benn already has at least. But Jeremy Corbyn is not one of them. And because of his own decision, not anymore, although that was the case before, not anymore because the Prime Minister refuses to see him. Now, it does have to be said that he does now have a bit of solidarity in this. In fact, a fair amount of solidarity. So it's not as bad as it could have been. Leaders of the other opposition parties are now taking the same stance that Theresa May has to budge on these red lines and in particular should rule out no deal, in which case if she doesn't, then they've said that it's a waste of time. They're meeting with her as well. But the thing is that they had already met her. So they have gone and talked with her and then come away saying, well, she's not budging on that, therefore there's no point. And the other thing is to bear in mind, particularly the Scottish and Welsh nationalists, is it's a very different thing for them. So Corbyn really needs to think about how it plays out across the country. He wants to try and demonstrate that he can be the next Prime Minister. You know, the Scottish and Welsh nationalists aren't looking for that. They have their own assemblies and they're certainly not looking to form a national majority government because, well, they don't put candidates outside of Wales or Scotland, respectively. So, you know, they're playing to a different audience, really. Now, I do appreciate that there'll be some in Labour that might not like him engaging with the talks as it makes him look like an accomplice to Brexit. But until he champions the cause for a new referendum, that's exactly what he is, regardless of what he does, particularly as everyone knows he really is in favour of Brexit anyway. If I might butcher a famous quote, I could say that for a no-deal Brexit to triumph, it requires only for Corbyn to do nothing. You know, the thing is he's pissed off most of his MPs anyway. He needs to think more about how his actions are playing out across the country, as well as in Parliament, and as well as to the Labour support to get him elected. You know, we're supporters of Labour's. Obviously, he doesn't want a load of newish Labour supporters who were inspired to join because of him leaving the party. But, you know, loyal party members are going to vote for him anyway. He needs everyone else to vote for him, the people who are not loyal to Labour. And that's what fills me with dread for the future of Labour. It's not only has he put incompetent MPs in senior positions within the shadow cabinet, because of course he's disenfranchised most of the effective ones who would do a much better job, but he keeps showing himself to be poor at political manoeuvring. If the current shadow cabinet ever found itself in the position where it's the actual cabinet, they'd first of all hardly ever be able to implement any of the policies they want. And when they did, they'd be attacked for them so much that the very next election they'd find themselves out and the Conservatives would dismantle it all in 6 months. Nothing would be gained except that they'd have lost all credibility for a generation for Labour. You know, Theresa May herself, I couldn't decide for quite a long time. I talked about this. I couldn't decide whether she was being cunning or naive. As a Remainer herself, was she just playing along to prevent a split in the party until her hand was forced and either a soft Brexit or no Brexit at all had to be implemented, nothing to do with her? It might explain why she implemented Article 50 before we even had a negotiating strategy. It might explain why she put the most airheaded Brexiteers in charge of the negotiations for so long. It might explain why she maintained a balance of pro-Brexit and pro-EU ministers in her cabinet, which effectively caused political paralysis. You know, it might explain why we've put no serious effort, as I've already said, into no deal. We have ferry companies who don't have ferries, who are supposed to transport trade goods between ports that can't accommodate them. So we don't have as many ferries as we should have. And the ferries we do have no ports to dock at. You know, cracking preparations. So, I mean, Yvette Cooper was pointing out as well with the Prime Minister that yesterday she was acting after the vote in exactly the same way as if she'd lost by just a few votes. There are also reports from her former and current allies that describe her as inflexible, not able or willing to deviate according to changing circumstances. So I'm now thinking, I'm not sure still, but I'm now thinking that May is genuinely trying to get her plan resurrected. As much as I believe that Theresa May does not want no deal, I'm now not sure that she has a realistic enough view of the situation to ensure we avoid it. She's invited members of the opposition parties to discuss things in Downing Street, like a magnanimous victor who wants to heal the rifts and find a way forward for everyone. How kind. But that's another fantasy playing out in this Brexit tragedy. She's vanquished. Her deal is dead. And she's at a huge disadvantage in these discussions. As a result, nothing will come of them if she doesn't change her tune. For me, the sinking feeling came when she said that the people of this country overwhelmingly want Parliament to get on with Brexit. Overwhelmingly. Now, not only are the indicators at the moment that the majority of people would now vote Remain, it was never overwhelming when the original referendum was held. It was tiny then. And the thing is, I know you don't always take what a politician says at face value, but that entirely false use of the word just spoke of a deep-rooted delusion in what she's doing to me. So we'll have to wait until Monday to see what her plan B is, but if it's to get more assurances and then put the deal back up for a vote, then I think the nation will collectively have that heart-in-mouth moment as you stare into the abyss. So far as things can be determined at the moment, Theresa May is still pushing her Brexit deal and Jeremy Corbyn is still pushing the idea of a general election. Both intentions were shot down in flames and the clock continues to tick remorselessly to the crack of doom. The only way the vote of no confidence would succeed is if Theresa May started to adopt a policy of pursuing the soft Brexit option. In this case, the ERG, the fanatical pro-Brexit wing of the Conservative Party, have basically said that they'd pull the trigger and then they would be willing to vote their own government out of office. But the Prime Minister shows no sign of doing that just yet. And she also has to make a decision, but by then it may be too late. The other thing is, does anyone really believe that ERG would do that? Because they know after a general election, their support would be weakened because they would be a much smaller pool of MPs. Whether the Conservatives came back with a majority or whether Labour became the new party, neither of them would go for their option. But nonetheless, that's the threat they're holding over her. And she's clearly frightened of those threats from the far right of her party because she knows that their demands are pure fantasy. She'd probably placed her hopes in the majority of Parliament sinking her tormentors by voting in favour of her deal, which of course could well have led to a soft Brexit. There's nothing in her deal that means we couldn't end up with a soft Brexit at the end of it. In fact, a soft Brexit would be far more likely than a hard Brexit. In a hard Brexit, the deal made it almost impossible to achieve that, if not actually impossible, because of the backstop. But I think she's miscalculated on that one, of course, and she's now paralysed by fear because she cannot promote a realistic solution without the risk of splitting her party. Something she has acted all the way through this to avoid. That has been her prime concern. Not the nation, not the future good of the nation. It's been her party not splitting. Both May and Corbyn, I would say, are playing poker at the moment with the nation's well-being, both holding on to a weak hand, and neither one really seems to understand the rules of the game. I already think it's disgraceful that Jeremy Corbyn isn't getting behind a people's vote, despite his assurances that he would if all other options were exhausted. With him refusing to meet the Prime Minister, of course, they are. It's also what an overwhelming number of Labour supporters want, and he did say that Labour members should decide Labour policy, not the leadership. He already said today, and I quote, "If the government remains intransigent, if support for Labour's alternative is blocked for party advantage, and the country is facing the potential disaster of no deal, our duty will then be to look at other options, which we set out in our conference motion, including that of a people's vote," or public vote, he said, sorry. But the thing is, how long does the government have to remain intransigent? It has remained so since the vote. So what sort of timescale are we looking at here? Labour's advantage is being blocked, and the country is facing no deal. That's our default position now. And what does he mean, look at other options, including a public vote? What other options are there? Mr. Corbyn, if the government won't change its own stance and blocks all your suggestions, you're out of options. I know he's worried about losing Brexit support in Labour voters as well, but he has to take a side now, and there are far, far more who want to remain than leave of these voters. The bottom line is that Labour is the party of jobs, of everyone having the right to a safe and secure job which allows them to live their life with dignity, to share in the prosperity of the nation. Everything about the course we're now on screams against those ideals. The members know it, Labour voters know it, so why isn't our leader acting on it? Before the vote of no confidence yesterday, I listened to the summarising speeches of Tom Watson and Michael Gove. I like Tom Watson, and I thought his speech was thoughtful and struck a nice tone. It wasn't possible for him to make a rabble-rousing speech like Michael Gove. After all, he wasn't trying to unite his own side. He was trying to persuade those on the other benches to come forward. The problem was that Michael Gove picked a huge hole in it. Although Watson highlighted the problems with Theresa May as Prime Minister, he singularly failed to mention Jeremy Corbyn at all. He did not explain why Jeremy Corbyn would be a better Prime Minister. Now, it comes to something when you get shot down by an imbecile like Gove. So did Tom Watson make a mistake? I don't think so, no. I mean, what could he say? What could he say that Jeremy Corbyn would take a firm stance on as Prime Minister? I don't know, and I'm a Labour supporter. Oh, I know what he wants for the country in general. But what are his intentions with Brexit? I don't know. But if May carries on doggedly with her deal, then we will crash out of the EU without a deal at all, unless Corbyn makes a stand against it. Not by saying what's wrong with her stance, but by taking a stance of his own. And the only hill he can stand on in this battle is the referendum. That is it. That's the only position he can successfully defend from, because he will have a majority of MPs who will support that. If he really wants Brexit, and it's an open secret that he does, then just make sure that one of the options in the event of leave is to remain in the customs union and single market. But make a stand now to avoid no deal or we're all sunk. And as I've said before, I'll say it again here because a lot of people get confused by this. I'm not suggesting we do something stupid like, do you want to leave under, May's deal? Do you want to leave under no deal? Do you want to leave but remain in the customs union and single market? Or do you want to remain or anything silly like that? No, what we'd be having is two questions. One, Do you wish to remain within the EU as a member, full member, or do you wish to leave the EU? Second question, in the event that we decide to leave the EU, which is your preferred position for the government? And then it's simple. That's how it should have been done to begin with, quite frankly. But the thing is now where we are, on Monday the 21st of January, next Monday as I do this, Theresa May will outline her plan B to Parliament, and it will be debated. If she suggests either a referendum or a soft Brexit, she splits her party. So she won't. So it seems clear that the only thing she can do is keep kicking the can down the road. She will offer her deal back for a revote, as insane as that sounds. Parliament will then vote on her plan on Tuesday the 29th of January, a mere 2 months away from the cliff face. And why are we in this position? Because Theresa May is dancing to the tune of a minority of Parliament, a minority even, although be it a large minority, of her own government, who want us to walk the plank into waters where there's sharks circling. They've somehow managed to convince people that the sharks are our friends and they're just going to swim us to a better boat. But the experts and history tells us otherwise. I don't want to get wet and cold, much less be eaten by sharks. But here we are, with a cutlet in our ribs, being edged further along that plank, with Corbyn on the boat saying how wrong it is what's happening, but not actually doing anything to help. So, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to click the like button, subscribe for further content. Because we've got 1,000 subscribers on the channel now, I get a couple of new toys. One of the new toys is a poll. So I'm going to put a poll out tonight as well for what you want the next video to be on. There's a few choices there, so have a look on the channel homepage. Hopefully you should be able to see it in the community tab. And I hope you enjoyed the video, as I said. And until next time, I'll see you later.